In 1928, a single Munich-based weekly called the Illustrator Beobachter reached more readers than the three biggest Berlin newspapers combined. Yet every photo inside it was cropped, retouched, or outright staged. Can you imagine that? While other papers reported shortages and grim realities, the Beobachter showed smiling workers beneath swastikas, a picture of a nation thriving. That weekly lie, repeated until it felt like common sense, flipped a fringe party of just 3% into the rulers of a continent. Stick around and you'll see how a cocktail of fake photos, ghost-written letters, and one well-timed fire turned democracy into dictatorship in under 5 years. The German Reich wasn't just broke, it was profoundly humiliated. War guilt clauses, a new currency that plummeted from 4 to 4 trillion per dollar. And a staggering 16 coalition governments in 14 years left people absolutely desperate for any story that could make sense of the chaos. The Nazis didn't create that simmering anger. They simply rented it cheap. Their newspapers printed price tables right next to anti-Semitic editorials, so readers could literally watch Jews being blamed for bread costing. When the Great Depression hit, party spinners didn't miss a beat. They simply swapped bread for jobs, and suddenly, the same old scapegoat still fit the headline perfectly. It was a masterclass in exploiting existing anxieties. Joseph Goebbels ran the Reich Ministry for Public Enlightenment like a startup with unlimited seed money and absolutely zero regulation. He bought radio time in bulk, forced manufacturers to sell sets below cost, then piped Hitler's speeches into every beer hall and living room on Tuesday evenings. Why Tuesday? Because it was statistically the slowest cinema day, so people stayed home. Meanwhile, party members were handed index cards titled Conversation Stopper that listed 3 false but footnoted-sounding stats to silence doubters at work. The goal wasn't to win debates. It was to make fact-checking feel antisocial, to make questioning the party line seem rude or unpatriotic. The Beobachter's darkroom had a simple, terrifying rule. If a crowd looked thin, copy-paste the same faces deeper into the frame. If an opposition leader looked calm, crop the police baton about to strike him right into the shot. How could anyone discern the truth? One famous cover even merged 2 separate rallies into a single overflowing square, then slapped on the caption, "The whole nation awakens." Within months, even skeptics were starting to say, well, everyone else seems on board. That manufactured bandwagon became chillingly self-fulfilling. Fence-sitters showed up at real events for fear of being the last holdout, solidifying the illusion of overwhelming support. On February 27, 1933, a lone arsonist torched the Reichstag, Germany's parliament building. Within an hour, Goebbels' office issued a press release already typeset, complete with mugshots of communist leaders claiming the fire was phase 1 of a Bolshevik uprising. The audacity was incredible. The very next morning, Hitler bullied President Hindenburg into signing Emergency Decree 48,233, suspended habeas corpus, freedom of the press, and assembly. By that weekend, 10,000 communists were crammed into makeshift jails. By spring, their party was outlawed. All of this was justified by a pamphlet that cited anonymous underground sources, a phrase repeated so often that newspapers actually started printing it in italics to save ink. With opposition newspapers shuttered and rival parties outlawed, the Nazis still needed one last thin veneer of legitimacy. So, they scheduled a snap election, then mailed every household a flyer, promising a day of bread and work. Turnout hit an astonishing 89%. The party jumped from 33% to 44%. The headline inside the special one-off edition of Volkischer Beobachter read simply, "The people have spoken." Underneath, in small print, was an asterisk noting that results were verified by party observers, a gentle, chilling reminder that the counters and the candidates now wore the same uniform. Disinformation didn't just grease Nazi skids. It was the entire vehicle that carried them to power. By the time camps were built and borders crossed, most Germans had been living inside an alternate timeline for years, one where Jews were stockpiling gold. Communists were hoarding matches, and only a strong leader could keep the lights on. Democracies don't die in silence. They die in 1,000 micro-manipulated headlines that feel too ordinary to question, too pervasive to fight. So, stay skeptical, stay informed, and maybe keep a Tuesday evening free for actual facts. If you spotted a tactic that reminded you of today's feed, drop a comment telling us which one. Hit subscribe for next week's deep dive into the radio games Mussolini played before Hitler even took the mic. And share this video with the friend who still insists propaganda can't happen here.